In any battle, you have to know your opponent's weaknesses. You have to know what makes them feel vulnerable, what leaves them out in the cold, and what makes them feel small. If we know anything about Drake, we know exactly what his insecurity is.
They're the real writers out here. You know what I'm saying? Who really do this, who really enjoy the craft of this. Then there's other artists who make great music, they put it together how they put it together. Like, I don't feel like we get to have that conversation. Like, it's other people that I should have that conversation with, that I truly respect they pen and stuff like that.
So Drake can't talk to you because he don't write his raps.
Yeah, I'm not with
And it would seem like Pusha T in this clip understands what his vulnerability is. It's the ghostwriting. It's the reason why he went at Drake in the first place. And that's a legitimate reason to go at Drake if he wants to be considered amongst the greatest of all time. We have to set aside two brackets of rappers. We have to set aside the people who write their music and the people who have others write their music, or at least occasionally have people write their music. There's a very big difference. This is artistry. This is what hip hop is all about. And that's a legitimate thing for Pusha T to mention. But why? With the release of his response to the Duppy Freestyle, the story of Adidon, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, why would he move away with that with his first? Let's not even go to the first line. The beat selection, for Christ's sake. Why you would use the story of OJ is beyond me. Meek at least did something correct when he came out with his response to Back with Wanna Know, because Wanna Know had the Undertaker freestyle. The Undertaker sample. So there was a bit of anticipation of what you thought Meek was gonna say. It was all building up, then when that shit went down with Chris, you wrote it check. So it sounded good at least at the beginning, but then it just trailed off. But the anticipation was there, and that makes for a great diss record. It's exactly what makes the Duppy Freestyle so great. It's Drake's discontent for his opponents, and just I can't even explain how baffled I am that you would even come at me. So just how condescending that sounds, that's what makes it work all together with the lyrics. But if you use the story of OJ, first of all, it takes you about 40 seconds to get into it. And before he even gets into that, he's talking about some spider stuff or some bikes. It's just, it's losing its punch already. And you're not going to perform the song better than Jay-Z. The song already has a mellow vibe, and so does the Duppy Freestyle. But at least the Duppy Freestyle is something that Drake made his own because it's a original instrumental. You understand what I'm going with? So if you use an instrumental that's already used, there's already a story over that beat, no pun intended. There's a narrative over that beat already, and if you don't outdo it, then you come up short. Now to discuss the ghostwriting. The very first line is, ghostwriting aside, drug dealing aside, let's talk about your pride. Why you would go away from what makes your opponent vulnerable in the very first place is beyond me. The only thing that I learned about this record about Pusha T is that he got his feelings hurt because Drake mentioned his fiance. And because of that, I guess rightfully so, Pusha T then starts to, divulge a lot of personal things about Drake. He talks about his mother and his father's marital issues. He talks about Drake fucking impregnating a porn star and hiding a kid away and calling him a deadbeat dad. And Drake may have opened that up because he mentioned the fiance. But still, it took Pusha T off of his game. And with that, I think we can say that Drake won this battle. I don't understand why you wouldn't make a record, or at least I can understand if Pusha T is trying to build up to something, because towards the end of the record, he says, and you're upset, referencing the track that Drake that he had dropped after the Duppy Freestyle. You're upset. I want to see what you're like when you're angry. So that's at least letting you know that there's going to be more records to come from Pusha T. But why wouldn't you just step on his neck now? You have to make a record about, listen, there's a difference between you and I. I write all of my rhymes. I do this. This is what you do. You're a product. You're a commercial. You're top 40. And as a matter of fact, speaking of 40, that was the best line of this record, by the way. It was the rebuttal, basically, that Pusha T had about Drake referring to Pusha T's age, saying you're older than the nigga that you're standing behind or something like that. Even though Kanye West and Pusha T are about maybe a month away from each other in age difference. If I'm not mistaken, Kanye is 40 and Pusha T is 41. Kanye is going to be 41 in about a month or two. But the flip that Pusha used with, still giving you classics, the only thing that dates me, OVO 40, hunched over, looking like he's 80 or something like that. That was a dope flip. That was a nice play on words. And it was really the only bit of lyricism that I got from this record. Everything else was, was a bunch of petty jabs about Drake and his personal life. And that's great because it's a diss record. And if Drake put his personal business out there, he put his fiance's name out there, then I guess he deserves the pettiness from Pusha T. But let's not forget that if you are going to put out a course of records, you've already allowed Drake to change the tone of this battle. We're already getting away from what made him respond in the first place and what you mentioned in the Breakfast Club interview that you went at him for. And now it seems like you just came out with an emotional response and came out with all this personal information. And if I were Drake, I wouldn't even respond. I seriously think that the failure of this record shouldn't get a response from Drake because, first of all, I mean, if you're Drake, what are you going to do? Are you going to talk about his family? Are you going to... Pusha T felt very confident that if anything, beyond the ghostwriting, I have better character than you. I'm a better man than you because I'm marrying someone. You are a deadbeat dad. I'm not. Your parents have all these issues. And this is something that Drake mentioned even on the Two Birds and One Stone record where he originally came at Pusha T. But it's almost like Pusha T was very sure about that, and he was less sure about the ghostwriting. So he got away from the ghostwriting, and it was basically an ad hominem attack. He just went at Drake's character, and he thinks that that's the way that he's really going to get to victory, by getting at Drake's character, and I totally disagree. And if you think about it, if you're Drake, you're already putting yourself in a very unique position. You are a marquee artist and you're throwing yourself into beefs like Drake tends to do. And you're already in a vulnerable situation because you are Drake. You're this very big brand. And now you're going up against an opponent who has nothing to lose, who's taking personal attacks at you. And it's almost going to be like a race to the bottom and who could get more petty with who. And I don't think people are that interested in hearing that. I love this beef because I think both of these people are capable of making great battle records. But I think Pusha T just ruined everything. He may have a diss or two lined up, but my frame of thinking about this is, why don't you just go for it now? Because everything about this sounded like a warm-up, and Pusha T's not in the position to lay out the tone. You sort of have to go about this on Drake's time. You can't just assume that he's going to come out with a record and lay this dud out here and say, well, I'd really like to see what happens when you get angry. What if he doesn't respond? This looks stupid. And then you look desperate, searching for attention if you put out another record to no response. And I believe the next record is really what Pusha T has to say. I'm hoping that the next record is talking about there's a difference between you and I. I am this, you are this, and nobody would disagree with that. But when you make this record just emotionally, what it really feels like is Jay-Z Super Ugly, which is an example that I always use. It always feels when somebody puts out a diss record and lays out so much personal information. It just feels like super ugly. It feels like Jay-Z's response to Ether just about a day or two after, just I skied it in your baby seats and I did all of this, which it sounds great and it's petty and it's very disrespectful, but it doesn't stand the test of time because it's just so petty. There's no technique that goes into it. It's just petty. And if there was something that you expected from Pusha, you expected bars, you expected some great lyricism, and this diss sounds like something that would probably be written by Papoose. That's what it sounded like. But what do you guys think about it? What do you think about the response to the Duppy Freestyle? What do you think about the Duppy Freestyle itself? Please let me know in the comment section below, and I will see you guys next time.